everyone, it's Tox from CritsHappen.com. Thanks for watching and welcome back. Today we've got another Kickstarter preview, this time for a game that's just about to launch very soon. It's called Give It to the King, and it's designed by Francois Valentin and is being brought out by a company called the Flux Capacity. This, at its heart, is a racing game, and while you don't need to know what 1.21 gigawatts is to win, you will need a little bit of luck and a little bit of strategy to come out as the victor. It's a 2 to 4 player game designed in about 20 to 30 minutes for gameplay. You're going to be in the role of a messenger who is frantically running down a hallway to bring a message or messages of importance to the king who is sitting on the throne room at the end of the hallway. The first person to reach the king each round is going to be paid for the messages they deliver. But the messages are dual purpose. Not only will they be a reward for the first person that gets to the king each round, they're also going to be able to be played during the race down the hallway to impact or impede your player or other players along the way. What we're going to do is show you a little bit about the game setup. We're going to walk through a little bit of gameplay, and then we're going to come back and we'll give you our opinions on how this works for a Kickstarter program. But until then, let's grab our best leather shoes, our most important messages, and get ready to secure some gold as we race down the hallway and give it to the king. Here we see a setup for a 4-player game of Give It to the King. Each player is dealt 2 random messages face down. They're each given 5 gold, and then each of them are going to randomly place their messengers along the starting spaces to begin the first round. The king is placed on his throne room, and then 5 different coins are placed, 1 for each round, next to the starting spaces. The person who is furthest behind at the beginning of a round takes one of the gold pieces signifying the beginning of a round. In addition, whoever has the most gold at any time during a game becomes the captain. And the captain has 2 very important pieces which we'll talk about in a moment. Now, how does the game play and how does a turn fold out? Well, on your turn, it's very simple. You're going to roll the dice. So let's say the green player goes first in this game. We're going to roll the dice, and at this point, each player has the option to flip over a message and use its in-game ability. Now, it's good to note that messages that are flipped face up will not be paid out if you're the first player to reach the king, but you will get to use them for their in-game effect. Any messages that are face down when you are the first person to reach the king each round, those will be paid out. So in the example of the red player, if the red player is the first person to make it to the king this round and does not play either of his 2 messages, he will be paid 5 gold. One is worth 3 and one is worth 2. If he had played one face up for its in-game effect, then that one will not be paid, although he still keeps it in front of him, it's not discarded, and he will be paid 3 gold for the message that's face down. If he were to play both face up, he would be paid nothing and the round would reset and we'd go to the next round. So there's some risk and reward around when you want to play your messages. The other thing to note is that while you start the game with 2 messages, at the end of each round, you're going to have the option to take any face up message, pay 1 gold and put it face down, and draw another card from the face down stack. So while the game starts with 2 messages, the next round you'll have 3, the next round you'll have 4, and based on when you play them face up and how much gold you want to pay to face them face down in between rounds will determine the options that are going to be available to you throughout the game as it goes between rounds. Now, it's good to know what each of the messages do so you understand how they impact the turn. It's also good to know how the turn operates. This is not a game where I roll dice and if I'm the green player, just move my guy 5 spaces forward. It's not that kind of racing game. This is all involved around leaping over messengers to make it down the hallway. So when it's my turn, for example, we'll take this green player who just rolled a 5. I cannot move the very front player, so the blue guy is not going to move. I can move my own player, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. However, if I move my own player, my turn is over and I'm going to have to pass the die to the blue player. Now that could be very good. Let's say this is the case of what's happened and I'm in the lead and I'm feeling very good. The problem is my guy is not going to be able to move because again, you cannot move the very front person. There will be times where there are potentials where there is no legal move. If that's the case, the captain gets blamed, and the captain is going to have to pay 1 gold to the general supply. So there is a little bit of a negative connotation with being the captain at times. However, after someone rolls, let's say the blue player is now his turn, and he rolls a 2. After someone rolls, each player has the option or the opportunity to flip a message face up and use its in-game effect. So let's say the red player decided that he wanted to flip over his News from Afar, which added +3 to the die roll for the blue player. That would make it a 5. Well, let's say the blue player went ahead and flipped over his message that had the hands clasped for a reroll, and both of them did that at the same time. This is the other positive side where the captain gets brought in. If more than one player flips over a message after a die is rolled, the captain gets to choose which message is going to take effect. If in this case the captain wanted the person to re-roll the die, then that message would stay face up in front of that player, and the other messages would be placed face down back in front of the other players. So in this case, the blue player would be forced to re-roll, and he would get a 4. Now, he is not the lead messenger, so he can move himself. However, 1, 2, 3, 4 would put him on the same spot as the green player, and you can't have more than one messenger on a spot. So his only 2 legal moves are moving the yellow or moving the red player. So in this case, let's say he's going to move the yellow player 1, 2, 3, 4. Then he has not ended his turn. He has not moved his own mini, he had a legal move, and no cards stopped him from ending his turn, like the stop card that could potentially come out. So he's going to roll again. He's going to roll a 1. Now the 1 is important. The 1 constitutes the big jump. Whenever you roll a 1, you automatically take the messenger who is furthest back and place them 1 space in front of the messenger furthest forward. If that's your own miniature and your own messenger, then your turn is over because you have moved your own miniature. But in this case, he can still continue going, and the blue player is going to go ahead and roll again. Now he gets a 3. Now, let's say in this case, the green player decides to flip over his stop. That means that no matter what the player moves, this is going to end their turn. So it would be beneficial possibly to either move the blue player 1, 2, 3, or move the green player 1, 2, 3. Remember, he cannot move the yellow player 1, 2, 3 because that's going to end them on the green player's spot. So in this case, the blue player is going to take a gamble and think that someone is going to roll a 1. So he's going to move the green player 1, 2, 3, because if someone rolls a 1, he lands all the way up here. So he would end his turn because the card tells him to end his turn, and he would pass the dice over to the red player. Now, as play goes along, players are going to be leapfrogging down the hallway and moving closer to this red carpet area. The first player to land on the red carpet is going to get 2 gold from the king. Now, let's say in this case, the green player becomes the first one to land on any one of these 6 spaces. If he takes 2 gold, and that puts him at 7 and the yellow player at 6, then he becomes the new captain. So that's going to switch throughout gameplay, and you're always going to be checking for that. The final thing to note is that if a player ends their turn on the number 1 space right in front of the king, on their next turn, they're going to walk into the king's chambers automatically, and they don't roll a die to get in there. So, if I'm the red player and I end my turn here, and I know on my next turn I'm going to walk in, my gamble is that the green, blue, and yellow player is going to go around the table. They're not going to be able to land on the king, and on my next turn I'm going to walk in. At the end of the round, let's say this is the way the round ends, it comes to the red player and he walks in. He is going to flip over his face down messages and be paid, in this case, a total of 5 gold coins, which would put him at 10 and also put him as being the captain. All of the players are going to shift backwards based on their area or where they are on the board right now. So the blue player goes last, the yellow player is going to go third, the green player is going to go second, and the red player is going to go first. The blue player is going to take one of the coins because they are the player furthest behind. They're going to have the option of paying a coin and flipping down one of their messages that were placed face up. And then each player is going to be given a new message to be able to be played. All the players are going to have the option of flipping down their messages and paying the coins, although the messages that were paid out, these are not considered to have been played, so even though they're turned face up for payout, they go face down to the red player as well. And then play starts and you begin another round. You continue on with that for 5 rounds, and at the end of the 5th round, whoever has the most gold has won the game. Now there is one other additional interesting thing I'd like to point out. The text on the messages don't have an in-game impact. Only the hand gestures is what's going to impact the game. However, what we found ourselves doing was actually having storytelling time or kind of a creative session when we were playing this game, in that we would flip something over, for example this one, and this says report on the court. So if we were to play that as an in-game effect or delivering it to the king, we would try and come up with a creative story moment and continue a story throughout the game. There's an importance to these messages, and that's why you're trying to rush down this hallway and give it to them. So we started adding our own creative flair as to why we needed to get them there. I don't think the designers intended that, but it was a nice little side thing that we started coming up with as we played our games. So that's Give It to the King. Now, first thing to note is this is not a final copy of the game. This is a beta or a pre-production version of the game, so it doesn't represent the final production quality of the game that you could get if you kickstart the project. The second thing is that because this is an unpaid preview, we're not going to be giving a crit, a hit, or a miss rating to the game, but rather talking just in general about our experiences as we played this game. Now, we played with 2 different types of groups. We played with an adult experienced group, and we played with a younger, less experienced group of children. And we found some interesting things. The first thing to note, let's talk about the game itself. It's very light, it's very easy to carry around. Being a filler type game, that was nice because we could take it with us. It could easily be put into a backpack or into a purse. No big worries about that at all. The first thing that I noticed when I first saw this game was, wow, it's an alley and it's like one big drag race. For some reason I didn't look at the minis because everybody else that I introduced it to was like, wow, that king is cool. People immediately jumped right at the miniatures, and the miniatures are very detailed. They're not a high quality like Warhammer or War Machine type miniature. They're almost like a 3D printed model, and the caricatures and the textures and the markings really fit with the theme. I thought they did a really good job with the miniatures, and the king is just really cool looking on his own, so no worries about that at all. Now, the gameplay experience was interesting. We found the game coming down to 2 halves. When the first half of the game, and if you break this up by thinking about the board is 4 of these individual planks, the first 2 planks, or the first half of the game, people were more inclined to let luck play a part in the game. So we would roll dice, we would see where people ended up, and move people along their course down the hallway. The second part, or the second half of the game, was where people started to hold their messages for tactical or strategic times. Especially in a 4-player game, landing on that number 1 spot and being able to walk into the king's chambers on the next turn was really, really big. So we saw people holding on to their messages at the end, which benefited you if you landed on the king because you get more money, or also allowed you opportunity to play them at a more impactful time than just randomly playing them more towards the front of the hallway. Now, with younger gamers, it was interesting because, and anyone who plays with younger gamers will probably understand this reference, it became kind of slapjack happy. The kids thought that the mechanic of the first person to play or turn over a message got their message to trigger meant that they have to turn over a message immediately at first. So once they got past that concept and started to have that discussion of risk and reward and when to time things, the only other thing they had a challenge with was when to move miniatures. Because you don't have to move your own person on your turn, that for a younger gamer was a little bit harder to grasp because they kept saying, well, I don't want to move Bob, or I don't want to move Zach, I want to move me. So it was a little bit of an interesting discussion point. Not too hard, very easy to get through, and once they did, they too started holding their cards until the end of the hallway to time it for more strategic points in the game. Now, all of that said, both groups did not find the game deeply strategic. They felt it was much more tactical than strategic. But both groups came away with a fun experience. In both cases, everyone that we talked to said it felt much more like a filler game that they would play in between larger games. Not something they could see themselves playing all night long, but something that did provide a different style of filler game than they were used to. Overall, I enjoyed Give It to the King quite a bit. I thought that with more development and maybe even more expansions, there is a good amount of opportunity involved in here with the mechanics. The mechanics are very solid and they are very simple, which always makes for fun gameplay. So at the end of the day, we enjoyed Give It to the King, and if you enjoyed this preview, you can go and check out their project. While it's not live as of the time of filming this, we will go ahead and put links in as soon as it's available so that you can go to the project and check it out for yourself. In the meantime, we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to leave your comments or questions below in the YouTube channel. You can of course join in on the discussion on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Google Plus by searching Crits Happen, or at our homepage at critshappen.com. But until we see you next time, we hope that you enjoy this critical preview. Keep rolling those dice, and we hope they're all crits.